Love to welcome Mr. Tim Andrews. He is the CEO and President of ASI. And Tim, introduce yourself.
Great. Well, thank you very much. For those of you who didn't hear, I'm in a tux today because SAAGNY is such a classy organization. I happen to be at our offices today filming part of the Counselor Awards, which is our annual event in Chicago, which is going to be virtual for the second time, and we hope the last time this year, that honors the top 40 and then a number of other individuals. And so I decided to keep my tux on for Rachel and for the gang here. So here we are.
You outdid me, and so I was a little upset that you didn't send me the memo prior. My group, just remember that, don't steal them. But yeah, so sorry guys, Tim is gonna one-up me today, but that's fine. We really appreciate your time today, Tim, and I'm gonna roll off some questions to you, and I'm sure you're gonna give me a plethora of information to bring back to my team and share with everyone that's on the call.
I'll do my best.
So, I mean, the infamous question that we all have, and you know, I'm sure you have a stock answer for this, but overall, what's the health of the industry as it stands today?
Yeah, I think the industry is poised for really a huge rebound. You know, obviously last year was incredibly difficult. You know, our estimates showed that sales were off about 20% last year. If we include all the sales of PPE that flowed through the network, which I think is an appropriate thing to do, billions of dollars of PPE that really helped save the industry. This year, the first quarter, we were down about 15% from last year's first quarter. And we think that is really terrific. We knew we were going to be down, but we're showing really, you know, it's been month over month, you know, gains. It's going to take a while. It's going to be a slow growth out, but I'm super bullish on the second half of the year. I think the additional rollout of vaccinations is incredibly helpful to get parts of the country reopened. We're starting to see events come back. We're starting to see small businesses reopen. You know, our industry is very dependent on educational activities, sports, you know, both private sports, but also, you know, educational related sports. Universities reopening, businesses starting to get back together and traveling again for business and getting together in convention halls, et cetera. We think about 40% of our revenue in the industry is associated with those kinds of big major events. Those are all starting to inch forward, you know, depending on what part of the country you're in. And so, so we're feeling pretty bullish for the second half of 21 and going into 22. I think we're really on a verge of a big growth spurt for the industry.
I'm really excited to hear that. It's very similar to what we're experiencing with my job, and I do feel that similarities. But it's exciting. And from your perspective too, you have a show coming up.
Yeah, we do. We actually have a few shows coming up, and we have two hosted buyer events in June. One in Texas, one in Colorado, and then in July we've got the ASI Chicago show. You know, and these were not easy decisions, but we, you know, predicted, you know, 60, 90 days out that we could pull these off and that we would do that safely for people. And we were looking at all the trend lines and talking to the local and state authorities in all three of those states. And we're pretty bullish about being able to pull that off. We certainly hope to see everybody. ASI Chicago, I'll put a little plug in, is July 13th and the 15th. And we're really excited about that. We'll be the first major show in Chicago. They have simultaneous, there's a basketball tournament happening also in the convention center, and then the big auto show opens after ASI moves out of the hall. But we'll be the first show to really help reopen Chicago. So I'm super excited about that, because I think, you know, our industry depends on big events restarting, and so we said, you know, we've got to restart our big events as soon as possible. We can't be saying the industry needs them to reopen and then not reopen our own. So I'm really proud of us leading the charge there.
That's a valid point. How does the attendance look for those shows?
You know, I think we're going to be down probably around 40% from 2019. You know, but I'm okay with that, frankly. And I think from an exhibitor perspective, we'll be down probably 40 or 45% as well. You know, Norman's on here, and he may not want to hear this part, but I mean, you know, we sort of agreed as a team that even if we break even, this is not about making money in Chicago. We really want to reopen the industry. And so, you know, I think this is not going to be the best financial performance we've ever had at a trade show for ourselves, but we think getting people back together is really important. We think there's a lot of people who want to come to a trade show. They want to spend time together. They want to reacquaint themselves with each other. And so we're going to do that, you know, in Chicago.
This is all great news. Going back to, I hate delving into the topic of COVID, but it really is affecting us immediately. And there's a lot of questions from the members. I appreciate you participating and really reaching out to Tim. Really, it all evolves around how did COVID affect the industry? So from ASI's perspective, I'll just start off with how many new distributors and or suppliers did ASI get, maybe through PPE or something else?
Yeah, interesting question. So, the retention was really quite high on the distributor side and on the supplier side. Surprising to us in some regards. We thought, we probably did what every other business did. We said, okay, here's the base case scenario. What's the next best case? What's the worst case? We had 3 or 4 cases we worked with. And, I thought we could have been in a situation where 20% of the distributors, went away if the lockdown had really been severe for 6 or 9 months or something. But the reality is just we were, high single-digit percentage points of distributors. We're still about 20,000 distributor in the network, 20,000 distributor firms in the network. And on the same on the supplier, we saw some suppliers leave, some suppliers came in. We're basically flat, in the total network with about a year and a half ago. So I think that's a pretty positive sign. I think that, certainly some people came in, some people went out, but that's not unlike any other scenario. Every year there's people that leave and come back, much like small businesses opening and closing in the United States. It sort of is the ebb and flow of small businesses.
Yeah. Well, speaking of ebb and flow, one of the questions we have is, trying to position this correctly. What is ASI's take?
What was that? I didn't quite hear that.
ASI's take on 22.
On 22. Well, I'd like to be through 21, but let's just say that that the trajectory remains the same. I think we'll be in a really good spot in 22. I think that, and I think on a couple of bases. One is, right now, we'll probably get into this a little while. There's probably a question here about supply chain, but we're sort of in a supply chain and inventory snarl right now. So I think that will clear up, not quickly, but in the next few months. So I think 22 will be a place where inventory is cleared up a little bit and maybe the supply chain is a little smooth when you get into 22. I think that businesses will be back in a much stronger way. Business people love to know what the future holds. They like to make plans. They like those plans not to change. We are creatures of habit. And so right now we're still sort of figuring out, okay, what's the work at home situation look like? And this is not just businesses in our industry, this is businesses across the world. What's that work at home look like? Are we really out of the woods here? Are people really are we going to hit 70% vaccination rate? So we really have a great herd immunity. There's still a lot of unknowns. I think we will, in the next 3 or 4 months, have a much clearer view of what the end of the year is going to look like. And that's going to help people in the fall, as they typically do, start making plans for 22. One of the best things that has happened really in terms of the early indicators, I think, besides the economics, and I'll get to that in a second, is that schools are mostly saying around the country they're going to be reopened. Universities and public, and parochial schools. So that's a really good signal and a good sign. And some of those were going to require, vaccinations for people, so that will get the herd immunity up a bit. And so I think that's all a good sign about that. Also, for those of you who've been on a plane lately, the load rates on the load factors and all these airplanes are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I happen to be traveling a couple of times on some business trips. Boy, the flights are going to be full. And so that's a good sign. I think we're still in sort of the leisure mode of ramping back up, and certainly the airlines are still adding flights, et cetera. But the business people are starting to come back as well. I think we're going to start seeing that come back. So I think, by the end of the third quarter, we're going to have a very good view of what 22 is going to look like. Where are businesses? Are they reopened? Do we have any relapse areas? Have we had to do some lockdowns, or is this really working really well? The masking going away, how are people feeling? And so I'm bullish. I think 22 could be a very strong year for the industry. We've got a few roadblocks. This is not going to all be easy. This return to whatever normal is going to look like, is going to take a little while, and it's going to be timid for a bit. But and there's some still real issues in the industry. But I'm really bullish on 22, and people need to start prepping for that right now. And one thing, by the way, to keep in mind is we've all taken a lot of costs out of our businesses. And I think we also need to be very mindful and cautious about adding costs back in. And so I think that's something we're sort of looking at ASI. I'm urging every distributor, every supplier, be careful as you add costs back in. Make sure that you really need to add those back in. because we need to build some profitability into organizations, and that's going to take a little time because people really had not only a sales decline, but also tremendous profit declines, obviously.
Interesting. So moving forward, I know you recently put out an article about your business plan. Mm-hmm. So those who did not get a chance to read it, if you want to just surmise that for everybody, because I found it very interesting.
Thank you so much. I mean, we're just really trying to stay focused on the business and, trying to encourage people to make good decisions, we all make a lot of decisions every day, to make really good decisions, to stick by those decisions, to adjust when you need to adjust, to open up things for normalcy. We're starting to prepare our offices. We've had some essential employees in our offices the entire time. I'm so proud of our team and what they've been able to do. We've also brought back some volunteers. We required them to all be vaccinated. So we've got maybe another 20 volunteers in addition to our 20 essential employees in our offices now. We're starting to think about what's the space going to look like? How do we reform that? And a lot of other tough questions. Are we going to require people to be vaccinated to come back in the office? Are they going to have to stay at home if they're not vaccinated? So I think all of us need to be thinking about how do we do that? And then outside of our own businesses, what outreach are we already doing with our customers and our prospects? We need to really re-engage with them. And I'm sure many of the people on this call have been in close contact with their clients and their prospects because they're like friends, in a lot of communities. But we really need to think about how do we really re-engage with them, and also ask them how they want to re-engage. Because there are some people that are still not comfortable. Everyone's got a different situation, a different story. And I think we're going to be very respectful of what those stories are and what they've gone through and kind of personal impact on their business or the business they work for. So I think we need to engage with people in a very, empathetic way before we get into the tough business, stuff, because we need to really understand where they're coming from. So that's a couple of things we're really urging people to do.
Oh, I appreciate that. Can you share a big aha moment? So I know COVID really forced us to change, and I think I look at that as a great opportunity. Did ASI have a big aha moment during this and say, we need to do X, Y, Z?
That we need to what?
Do X, Y, Z.
I think our biggest aha moment was simply, like most people on here, realizing we cannot be at the office. We're going to have to be at home. And, luckily we had made some provisions a couple of years ago to start moving everybody to a laptop. And so most of our staff had laptops. We had not used much video conferencing, like all of us probably, and had to shift to that really quickly. I think as the course of time went on, probably my biggest aha moment is we're doing a heck of a great job working from our homes and using video and keeping in touch. And I would have never have thought that was going to be as possible, If somebody had said to everybody on this, if I just announced right now, if we were in a room together, at a SAAGNY location, in a hotel somewhere, and I announced, beginning tomorrow, you must work from home for 90 days and you cannot leave your home, okay? I don't know what would have happened to me, right? Or if I had said, let's plan this work from home thing, and we're gonna plan it out, and then once we start, we're gonna be in our homes for 30, 60, 90 days. It would have taken us 6 months to plan that. So my biggest aha moment is how fast we can move to change ourselves when we really have to. When we have no choice, how quickly can we move? And I think our industry is a perfectly good example of that. If we were standing in Orlando in January of 2020, and Rachel, I said to you, PPE, those 3 letters, would you have known what I meant? Right? No. And if we walked around that trade show floor, yes, there would have been hand sanitizer, and yes, there would have been other kinds of things that we knew, were important in our industry, but not in the context of saving lives. Would we have been able to find a mask on the showroom floor? I mean, I don't think so, probably. Maybe we could have. But our industry moved so fast. The supply chain reacted so quickly. Our distributors started talking to their clients and started getting phone calls from their clients, and they started calling suppliers, and they started hearing from suppliers. The suppliers started sourcing product they had never sourced before. I mean, hundreds of suppliers in our industry sourced product they had never had before. They pulled it in, they figured out how to sell it blank, if that's what was required because of the speed of the need, or they figured out how to embellish it in some sort of way by decorating. And so I think that, for me, is an aha moment about our industry. And I'm gonna give you one more. You asked for one, but I'm gonna give you one more. So here's the other aha moment. So we went through all of that, and we fulfilled billions of dollars of promotional product sales in PPE. And then at the end of the year, in the third and fourth quarter, probably many people on this call will say, wow, I had a pretty good fourth quarter. Companies were really spending money. They were doing gifts for their clients and for their customers, for their employees. And by the way, I had to get into kitting and fulfillment because I had never done that before, but my customers were saying, hey, I want to give you a list and I want you to mail this stuff out. And I want you to get it from 4 suppliers, blah, blah. And we figured all that out. But here's the point I want to make about the aha moment. Think about the trust that our clients, that your clients had in each of you as a distributor and for each of the suppliers. The clients trusted that when they called a distributor, the distributor was going to source for them product they needed to save lives, save their lives, save their clients' lives, and save their employees' lives. And they called later in the year saying, I'm going to give you the personal addresses of all my most important clients, all my most important prospects, and all my employees, and I want you to fulfill orders and ship directly to those folks. Think about the trust factor that we demonstrated. This industry is, often like looking over everybody's shoulder, and there's more paranoia in this than I've ever seen. But in this world we lived in 2020 and going into 21 and through 22, I hope we just pause and appreciate those two things. Our industry saved lives and moved quickly. And 2, our customers trusted us unlike they've ever trusted us before. And that is incredibly valuable, I think, for us.
How do you shed light with other industries that are not familiar with the promotional product industry? So showing our value. How do we connect with the other industries?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think one of the most important research projects we do every year, which is called the Ad Impression Study, the Global Ad Impression Study, and it's available on asicentral.com/research. So if you go to asicentral.com and /research, you'll find the study. And that study shows by product category across all of promotional products, the return on investment that a marketer should expect for all of those different products. And it shows how long do people keep that product, what do they pay for it typically, what's the impression cost, per 1,000 impressions, just like they buy digital advertising, just like they buy, ads, online and lots of other ways, billboards or, drive-bys, et cetera. So there's some comparative data there that they can use. And that information, I think, is such a valuable way for us as an industry to show and prove our return on investment. And by the way, it is the best return on investment you can get. If we think back to the last time there was a Super Bowl, okay, so a few months ago, I guess, and we think about the advertising that was on the Super Bowl, probably very few of us, there may be 1 or 2 adamant people here, could remember 1 or 2 of the advertisers on the Super Bowl, and yet they spent $5-6 million. Think about how much that company could have generated in impressions and in thoughtful use of that $5 or $6 million for 30 seconds or 15 seconds, whatever it is, to spend that money on promotional products and to reach out to their clients, because their clients are going to keep those products 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years. I mean, how many of us have promotional products that go back decades to college or something? And so I think that powerful impression study helps everybody here demonstrate the power of that return on investment. And by the way, on the website, you'll see lots of downloadable graphics you can put into your social media and you can reuse, et cetera. They're all very friendly for your customers. They're built for you to reuse. So a lot of good information there. I think that's really the best way. We've also got to not look at our toes all the time. I feel like we're in an industry where sometimes people get in an elevator and somebody says, what are you doing? Somebody says, I'm a doctor. Somebody else says, I'm a surgeon. Somebody else says, what are you doing? They go like, well, I sell shitty, stuff with logos on. We need to raise up and say to ourselves, and that's one of my points about the PPE that we sold. We need to raise up and say, I help companies market themselves in an incredibly cost-effective way, and that's really important today more than ever, because companies are going to have less money to spend, especially small businesses, which are the backbone of our industry. The small businesses, the barbershops and the restaurants and all of those kind of businesses really are going to have less money to market themselves and do now, but they need to market themselves a lot. So we're an ideal medium for them to use.
And when you're saying that we have to, they need to market themselves more than ever now. And I agree with that. I recognize that from, 2008, during the recession. You took that opportunity to share that with the distributors and suppliers to say, hey, there's a need for this now more than ever, rather than digressing and saying, let's just ride the wave.
Absolutely. And distributors should not forget to market themselves too. So I think this is like the cobbler's kids have no shoes, or whatever that saying is that I just sort of mangled. We have to remember to do self-promotion and really be using our products to promote ourselves as distributors and suppliers. I think we sometimes forget about that. We don't do as good a job there as we probably need to.
I'm sure 90% of us can say I'm a victim of that. I say victim because I work for somebody else. So, and I appreciate the topics relative to COVID, but let's talk about, let's dial it back a little bit. Going back to PPI, you and Paul shared a very, very great fellowship, and you really merged PPI and ASI together. What is the outlook on that?
Yeah, well, we didn't quite merge it together. I like that. I like that thought. But yeah, Paul and I were quite close and quite friendly. And I know Bob very well too, who's in an interim role at PPAI. I've known Bob for a very long time also. He certainly has served PPA well, in a role with Paul. So we've already had 2 or 3 video conference chats. We've traded emails. He's going to bring a couple 3 staff members to the ASI Chicago show to sort of see how we reopen. And I kidded him. I said, okay, look, steal ideas from me. I'll go to PPA in January, steal ideas from you. I'll use those in Orlando, et cetera. So I think that's going to continue.
Then we're good.
What was that?
As long as you share those with me.
We'll share them everywhere. Well, if you come, you can see what we're doing, and then I don't have to tell anybody. That's the best outcome for me, is to have everybody there.
Point taken.
So I think that'll continue. I think we have a great relationship and a great mutual respect, and I think that's going to continue.
Fantastic. I love the synergy between the two, and I think you and Paul did a great job, and I'm sure it will continue with Bob as well. So what is, tell me a little bit now, again, dialing it back a little bit more, how did you start off in the industry?
Wow. I was sitting in my office at the time in Kansas City, and I got a phone call from a headhunter who said, we have a very unique opportunity in an industry you've probably never heard of. And he started describing promotional products. And I was like, well, yeah, my office is filled with what you just described, but I had no idea it was an industry. And back then it was probably around a $13 million industry, I guess. I mean, I just celebrated my 18th anniversary at ASI, which is it's shocking and amazing and joyful for me, all 3. And I thought it was probably, honestly, I met the Cohn family, Norman and his family. They're incredible people. And so I joined the company, was invited to join the company. And I probably thought this was a 3 or 4 year kind of opportunity, frankly. We had some goals we wanted to hit, and we worked through those pretty well. And so here I am 18 years later. I am like a lot of other people on this call. I have to say, I saw a few of the names on this call, like some of the people on this call and other people we've all seen. You get pulled into this, and it's sort of like it's like being pulled into the Milky Way. You can't get out. The gravitational force is so strong that you may think you're going to leave, but people sometimes do, and then I always see them pop back up. Magically they left, and they're back in the industry as a distributor or supplier. So I think that's because this is an entrepreneurial industry. When you're talking to someone who is a distributor or supplier, 90% of the time you're talking to the decision maker, the owner, the operator, the person who cares most deeply about that company. And they can make decisions. And let me tell you, when I walk the show floor, exhibitors do not mind telling me whether they had a great show or not such a great show sometimes. And 80% of those booths, as you all know, are an owner or a principal or somebody who's been there for a long time. And I love that. I love that straightforwardness. It's not an industry where you're talking to somebody who's going to talk to somebody, who's going to talk to somebody, who's going to talk to somebody, who's going to, all the way up the chain. These are people that really care. And you make their life better. I mean, that's, when we talk at ASI about what we're trying to do, it is always about how do we help distributors and suppliers make their businesses better? Because if we do that, if we help you all do that, then it'll all work out for us. I'm convinced that if we do that for people, if you become more profitable and you generate more sales and you feel good about what you did using ESP or going to one of our trade shows or whatever it might be, then we'll get our fair share of whatever that means. So that's what drives me. I mean, that's why I'm here. I love that, And
I love your enthusiasm about it. We're almost about the half-hour mark, so.
Wow.
Yeah, it went very fast. So let's just summarize this. What can ASI do for SAAGNY? Kidding.
Wow. You want me to answer that?
No, I'm teasing.
I mean, I got an answer or two, but we can take that offline if you want.
An open membership? Yeah, sure.
I think we could, I mean, we love trade shows. We'd be happy to talk about working together on trade shows. We had a show in Philadelphia. We had a show in New York. We looked a couple times at working with SAAGNY in Atlantic City. We'd be happy to talk about that again. They're all members. I guess I can say that.
Great. No, I agree with you, and I know we'll have future conversations, I'm sure. So there's a question coming in. I can't see the name, but Tim, when the industry is starting to rebound, are there specific product categories that you foresee that will be on top of customer buying list?
You know, it's interesting. We're seeing a comeback of a lot of the same categories one would expect. You know, drinkware is come back, you know, super hot. Writing instruments are always super hot. I think you're going to start seeing some innovation, but innovation is going to be a ways away. So I think in most of the categories, there's going to be a longer lead time on new product introductions than there historically has been, because of the supply chain disruption we're seeing, and the prices are rising in terms of raw materials, et cetera. So I think you're going to see some of the traditional lines come back. One of the things that's occurred during the pandemic, and this could be driven for a specific reason I'll get to in a second, but we certainly have seen a lot more brands come in. We're seeing a lot more food come in, you know, and part of that, you know, and what I was alluding to it, a lot of that I think was because of the third and fourth quarter. People wanted to spend a bit more money. If they're going to pay to ship something to somebody, they want it to be a high quality item. They don't want it to ship, you know, they don't want to spend $10 to ship a $2 item, right? Unless that item is with other things of higher value. We'll see if that, you know, really continues. You know, there's been a flood of food products coming into the industry. Lots of big suppliers having food. Very exciting. I think that's a really great addition to the industry. You know, we went all the way back. You know, this industry didn't have wearables in it, you know, until a certain point, and then wearables came in and became a big thing. I think food and food gifts are going to be an important aspect. Whether it grows as big as these big players seem to think it's going to be, we'll see. That could have been really a third and fourth quarter kind of phenomenon, and bolstered by COVID and additional spending. And we may find out that, wow, they were just a quarter late. You know, it may be like a fidget spinner kind of situation, but I don't think so. I mean, we all like good food. I think it's going to be about quality in that. So I think I would look for the standard bearers to be out there. But boy, there's a lot of innovation that's going to come out, I think, as soon as people are able to get to Asia, get to more innovation, et cetera.
Great. Well, I truly do appreciate you taking the time out for our members today, Tim. Is there any last words that you want to share with SAAGNY? Any enlightenment?
Enlightenment. Here's something I would really ask you to remember. Don't forget what we've learned in the pandemic, and I say that on a personal basis and on a business basis. So first, on the business basis, we've learned that video can work really well. We've learned that we can work in lots of different places. We've learned, I think, that seeing people's faces is really important. You know, that a phone call, which we all would have, I mean, really 98% of us had really probably never used video hardly at all before the pandemic, and now we've all lived through it. So let's think about how do we incorporate that into our daily lives, and how can we do things in video that will no longer require maybe an in-person, and then use in-person in ways that in-person is better. So that's on the business side. On the personal side, you know, what's important is our lives and staying connected to people and being with our friends and our family. And I think that, you know, I look at my friends and my family differently than I did probably 2 years ago. You know, people are precious, time is precious. And so how do we connect professionally using video, and how do we make sure we're spending time with people that matter in our lives? And you know, because things can happen in a blink, as I'm sure every person on here has seen. We talked about 9/11 earlier before the call started. Probably all of us have been touched by somebody who's been either seriously ill or lost to COVID. And you know, we never know what's going to happen tomorrow. No. Except in July is the ASI show in Chicago. We know that's going to happen. So make sure and be there. Make sure and be there.
I will second that. The ASI show is in July in Tampa, you said?
What's that?
It was in Tampa, you said?
No, it's not in Tampa, in July. You know, well, we'll look at Florida. We're going to have Orlando in January. You can come down to Orlando in January.
Probably will. But with that, there's no more questions coming through. So I appreciate you taking the time out of your day today. And, you know, next time, send me the memo about the dress code, please. You're not supposed to one-up me. And members, I appreciate you participating with your questions and everything. As always, I'm here to support you, and I appreciate your support.
Great. Thank you very much for the invitation. I've really enjoyed the afternoon.